Hello, ladies and gentle friends. So today, finally, I am going to be reviewing and discussing House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. So, House of Sky and Breath is the second novel of the Crescent City series, which, if you haven't read the first novel, you should probably skip this video altogether because there are going to be a lot of spoilers for both this as well as the first novel because it's a continuation, obviously. But Sky and Breath leaves us right where we left off in the first novel, which is Bryce and Hunt, obviously, finally coming together, even though they've been living together for a while, but they're trying to live a happy, normal life, but as we all know, that can't happen because, it's a Sarah J. Maas book. You can't expect anyone to be happy, ever. At least not to, the very, very end of the series. But I digress. What this book is following is pretty much the rebellion against the Asteri. So the Asteri is this group of very powerful beings in the world, and they're kind of controlling everything. They're sort of the top of the hierarchy as far as all the creatures in this world. And as you all know, Hunt's backstory, part of it involves him being a part of a rebellion that goes very badly, which leads him becoming a slave and his lover dying. So yeah, there's a whole thing with rebellion in the story, and that's pretty much the main theme. Similarly to how the first novel was sort of like this buddy cop but also romance, this is a lot of espionage, sort of spy things going on. But this book follows a lot of different POVs, mostly Bryce and Hunt and Rune's, similar to the first novel, but also Therian, as well as Ithan, which is Connor's younger brother. So all these guys end up somehow in this rebel, I think it's Ophion is the name of the rebel group that's going against the Asteri. And they learn about this rebellion through Cormac, who at the beginning of the novel, well, towards the beginning, the Autumn King, Bryce's father, kind of tells Bryce, hey, you're betrothed to this guy, Cormac, who's also your cousin. And Bryce does not obviously want to be with Cormac because she's with Hunt, but Cormac doesn't really want to be with her either, but they kind of strike a deal, and it's kind of as it were, if they participate in this rebellion thing, they have something to work towards. So their betrothal is sort of a cover-up for them being in cahoots for the rebellion. And as time goes on, Cormac tells Rune, because he can sort of do this mind speaking thing, at least I think that's why he told him to do this, to talk to one of the agents. Obviously they can't give each other their actual names, so Rune goes by Agent Knight, I believe, and the other agent is Agent Daybright, so they have this correspondence that's happening throughout the whole novel. And Ithan, Connor's younger brother, the wolf, he has this sort of side plot where he's trying to at first he's trying to speak to his brother from beyond the grave through necromancers, as well as he asks Hypaxia towards the end, hey, can you help me talk to my brother from beyond the grave? And she's like, sure. But another part of his plot is at the necromancer's sort of place, there's these people, these mystics, who are sort of under this, they're in this mental state where they're not mentally there. And Bryce, Ithan, and I believe Therian is also there. I forgot who else is there with them, but they all see that this is kind of wrong. These people are kind of trapped in these cages and, forced to do this mystic stuff. And Ithan meets one of them, and one of them happens to be a wolf. And then he senses that she's an alpha specifically, and he's like, well, why would you put an alpha in one of these cages? So that's sort of his storyline. And personally, I was trying to figure out, what does this have to do with everything else? I get, Ithan sort of has to have his thing if he's going to be, a main character, but it's what does this have to do with the spy stuff? I don't know. But amidst all this rebellion stuff, Bryce and Hunt, at the beginning of the novel, it's mentioned that they haven't consummated their relationship. They're waiting until, I think, winter solstice, I believe they said. Obviously, they don't last that long, but, they were waiting for then. But, while that's all happening, they try to infiltrate this rebel base. Not infiltrate, because they're kind of in cahoots with the rebels, but they realize that Pippa Spestos, one of the rebellion leaders, is crazy, and she is a murderous psychopath. So our heroes, being that, you know, they're good guys, are like, well, we don't want you to do that. We don't want you killing these Vanir. So Pippa Spestos is a human, and her whole gripe is like, the Vanir are bad people. They have these powers that can overpower humans. So, you know, it's kind of like a power imbalance there, but the humans also have these technology that helps them out, that kind of levels the playing field. But still, Pippa, or Peppa, whatever her name is very upset at the Vanir for, you know, being Vanir. So our friends Bryce and co fuck shit up as usual, but in this case they end up being followed by I believe it's the Harpy, the Hind, and someone else. They get whiff of like the fact that they're there in the rebel base, and they have to run to the sea, and they're struggling because, you know, people's powers can only go but so far. They're in the water, it's all these things, and then at the last possible minute they get saved by this sort of submarine that's a part of the it was called the Ocean Court, the ocean people, you know, the mayor. Yeah, they help them out. And while they're in this sort of summary thing is where Bryce and Hunt at this point, because Bryce was in danger, is all super charged up and is like ready to like kill everyone because they are mates. Yes, that's why he had this whole super max ultra alpha hole moment where he just couldn't control himself, was just lightning everywhere, his eyes were lightning because Bryce was in danger and that's his mate. And then they, you know, they do in the submarine. I think it was in some kind of garden, but then as they're doing it, she's able to teleport finally, because throughout the beginning of the novel she was wanting to learn how to teleport because Cormac was like, hey, you could probably teleport because you have all these fancy powers. She finally teleports and they end up in an airlock, which is like funny because they didn't notice really until afterwards, and I'm like, you didn't realize that like you were in a completely different space at any point? I think Bryce noticed, but I don't think Hunt did until like afterwards. But the point is, she has additional powers. Also, while they were, you know, doing the do, similar to how Rowan and Aelin from Throne of Glass, like their powers can merge together to create super duper powers. So yeah, that's what they can do, which is pretty cool. And I suspected that their powers would merge for a really long time. Also, towards the beginning of the novel, I believe Ada's kind of just show up and he's kind of like, you guys do know that you haven't, you know, used up all your powers. There's still a lot that you haven't tapped into yet. And like when that was said, I was like, yeah, I figured that, but also, yeah, so they're obviously going to be more powerful by the end of the book, because if he says they haven't used all their powers, they haven't used all of them. But they do have the ability to merge their powers together, which they discovered not only then, but as they were fighting against the Underking's sort of hounds, his sort of his henchmen. They were like chasing them around, and that's when they discovered they can use the light from the gate to like boost their powers. It's pretty cool. Although, like, when I was reading it, I was trying to figure out what exactly was happening. I was like trying to picture like, how does this look? And speaking of the Underking, what Bryce and Hunt find out when they're there is that, you know how with the first light, second light, all stuff like that, when people die, they go to the, what's it called, Sleeping City, and their souls rest there, and, you know, it's supposed to be peaceful. That doesn't always happen. What happens is their souls sometimes get eaten. Yeah. So the whole thing with like Danica's soul not being able to rest seems like it probably was a good thing, because luckily her soul's not gonna get eaten now, because that's what a lot of people, it happens to a lot of people, and I'm just like, oh dear, this is not a good thing. This is very important information that will come back much later in the book, which, looking back with the ending now, I can kind of see like that's where they were going with it. Like, it makes sense, like how they kind of set up, like, oh yeah, the Iron King's like, yeah, we've been eating your souls, and then the reveal at the end, I'm like, ah, yeah, I guess that does make sense. I completely skipped over the whole Sophie thing. Sophie is one of the rebels, and it's revealed that she's Cormac's, who's Bryce's betrothed, as well as her cousin, his lover. And, you know, she's the person who, at the very beginning of the book, that we see getting sent to, like, the bottom of the sea. Yeah, she's dead. I don't know why I said it like that. That was so... Yeah, she's dead. But also, as this is all going on, they're trying to find her brother Emil, who it's believed that he has these super Thunderbird powers that Sophie also had, but then it's revealed that he doesn't have any powers at all. But they said that he had powers to make it seem like he was the same level as Veneer, so Veneer would sort of not kill him or not think he was of use, because, you know, if he's a human with no powers, they're gonna be like, ah, whatever. I guess that's why that was happening. But yeah, it's real that Emil, her younger brother, doesn't have any powers. They're spending the whole book finding her, but then it's real that Bryce knew where he was, and he was with the Viper Queen the whole time. Not the whole time, but like part of the time. And then he gets adopted by Bryce's mother and stepfather, and he gets sent away to Nadaros. And it's a happy ending for him, at least so far. Another character that has a lot of things going on is Therian, the mayor, the merman, mayor. The point is he has fins. Well, not when he's above, but when he's beneath, when he's in the water, he has fins. His whole thing is he's betrothed to the River Queen's daughter, but he doesn't really want to be with her. So he's trying to avoid getting married to her, as well as avoid the River Queen's wrath by just staying above as long as possible. I mean, he has to like dip his fins in, you know, every once in a while so that he doesn't end up like trapped in like his human form. But yeah, like he wants to stay above, he wants to enjoy his life. He doesn't really want to be stuck with the River Queen, you know, doing her bidding and then being with the River Queen's daughter. So his whole thing, his arc, I guess, is just trying to get out of the situation. And Emil, finding Emil, is how he's, at least, if not getting out, he's like delaying the inevitable for as long as possible. But towards the end, we see that Therian gets sort of caught by the River Queen's daughter. I don't even remember her name. But the point is, after the whole gala party thing, she's like, you don't actually want to be with me. And then he's like, how did you know? And then he knows that the River Queen's going to be pissed. So he's like, I'm going to go to the Viper Queen and just be like, I'm going to sell myself to you, because then the River Queen can't do anything, because the Viper Queen is very important, as we've seen. So yeah, he kind of sells himself to her, and, you know, he's sort of her slave now, but he went into it willingly just to stay above. And I'm just like, dude, this was very, like, it was a rash decision, because he was just like, I know what I can do, I can go to her. And it's just like, then he runs to her and is like, please take me in. And then she does, but it just, I don't know. It's like, obviously, like, he had a different plan for how to get out of the situation, but this one seemed like very rash on his part. Now, as far as the romances here, there's obviously a lot of Bryce and Hunt smut. We're happy about it. They're mates, which I predicted. I figured they were mates. But, like, the way it's explained is that, like, you know, Fae are usually mates with other Fae, at least in this world. That's, like, the norm. Well, I think Fae mates here are also sort of rare, but, like, that's norm. Whereas, like, a Fae, half Fae plus an angel, that's not really heard of. Those two being mates, but they're mates, so it's a thing. Because similar to Agatar, people can tell through the scent, so people can smell that they have made it, that they're mates. Like, you can't really hide it. So that's where they are. Now, as for Rune, I think most people expected, you know, Rune and Hypaxia to sort of be together, but it didn't really seem like they had that much of a romantic connection in the first book. Yeah, that's not happening now, because not only has Rune sort of found a lover in Ancient Daybright, who was revealed to be the Hen, aka Lydia Servos, aka Hypaxia's half-sister. Yeah. And also Hypaxia is kind of a secret lover to Celestina, who is the new archangel presiding over the, what's it called? The 33rd in Crescent City. So yeah, she's gay. So yeah, her and Rune wouldn't have been a thing anyway. Well, I guess they could have still gotten married, but it wouldn't have been, like, enjoyable, you know? But this happens at the gala. While the gala is happening, there's also a moment where Bryce is still technically betrothed to Cormac, so they do walk in together. Hunt's kind of behind her, and then she quickly tries to avoid like the Fae, as well as her father, and she goes over to the Styrie and then grabs Hunt's hand, is like, "Hey, this is my mate, Hunt Athalar." And then the Styrie like, "Oh, okay." And the Cormac's like, "What? We didn't plan this. What?" He was pissed off. But the Autumn King was a lot more pissed off because he's like, "How dare you?" But Bryce was smart in doing this plan because the Autumn King can't really do much in front of all these people, so he can just be mad and throw a hissy fit, but he can't really do anything, so that was smart. But yeah, the Styrie have acknowledged at this point that Bryce and Hunt are mates, which means that the, the engagement with Cormac's kind of off because they're mates. You can't really get in the way with that. So they respect their union, and that's that for that. And this is the moment that Rune and Agent Daybright were talking. So at the gala, they were supposed to meet at midnight at this sort of fountain outside, and Rune goes there, but at first he sees the harpy and he's like, "Oh, I hope it's not the harpy that's Agent Daybright." It's not. But then as he's running out, he saw the hen, and he's like, "I gotta get out of here." Yeah, as I said before, it's revealed that the hen was, Agent Daybright. And after this, Agent Daybright, still like not revealed yet, knows that Rune is Rune, so she calls him by his name, and he's like, "Oh, so you see me?" And she's like, "Yeah, I did, but I wasn't able to talk to you." Which, like, right there sort of, yeah, revealed it, because it's like, well, the only person besides the harpy who we know it's not it would have been the hen, and yeah, you kind of put two and two together. But as for additional surprises in the novel, a big surprise was who Danica's father was a big one. Her father is, I think, what's he called, a bloodhound, so he has like this super crazy sense of smell where he can just sense anything, which Danica also was one, so she had the super crazy sense of smell. She can sense anything, which is why she knew that Sophie, the rebel who passed away, was a Thunderbird, because she can like sense that, and that's how like Danica and Sophie were sort of working on this whole rebel stuff together. But it wasn't just rebel stuff, it's revealed that it was like just trying to find out about the lineage of the people, the veneer on this planet, and then there's like a whole lot of stuff revealed all because of that. But also Baxian, who is he the Hammer or the Hellhound? I get them mixed up. But yeah, one of the people who we thought was a bad guy but really wasn't a bad guy was actually Danica's mate. Now Bryce had no idea that Danica had a mate, and even I was just like, there's no way she had a mate. How? When would this have happened? But I mean, Danica had a lot of secrets from her, so I guess that would have made sense. But still, it was like, where? How? When? But anyway, by the time you get to the end of the novel, it's revealed that a lot of their questions will be answered if they go to this whole Styrie building thing. I forgot what it was called. But they go infiltrate that building towards the end. It's Bryce, Hunt, Rune, Therian, and Cormac. They all go in. Although Therian and Cormac sort of had this little separate mission, but as it's happening, Pippa Spessos, the rebel leader, comes in and like shoots Cormac. Cormac dies. Therian runs away, goes somewhere. And while this is happening, Bryce is sort of in these archives looking through all this information. She finds out a lot, including the fact that like the Styrie are like this alien race that has been going to other planets, conquering other planets, sucking up all their life force, killing them, and then going to the next planet to pretty much eat more first light, souls, life force, whatever. The point is, you know how we thought, like, yeah, they're not good guys. Yeah, they're really not good guys. And then, similar to the first book, how, like, Micah had this evil villain monologue. Yeah, Regalis, one of the Styrie, he is, like, over the loudspeaker, like, "Hey, Bryce, you stepped right into my trap." And I'm just like, I kind of figured it was a trap, but I was trying to figure out who exactly set the trap. It was him all along. And it's kind of funny because she literally says at some point, "You're not going to do the evil villain monologue thing because I've already done this." Which I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, thanks, Bryce, we're on the same page. So yeah, it's real that Danica and Sophie had sort of found that information about the Styrie, that like they were eating people's souls, which is actually the reason why Regalis sort of set it up for Micah to want to kill Danica. So it seemed like it was Micah's idea, but it really wasn't. It was the Asteri's idea all along to kill Danica. And the reason that Danica died wasn't for the reason that we thought it was for the reason that the Asteri said. That's very confusing, but it would make more sense if you read the book. It was a little confusing for me too at first. I was like, so wait, the reason why Danica died, or we thought she died, wasn't the actual reason? Yeah. It's revealed that all these different Vanir they all came from different planets. Like they all are from different planets, but it's revealed that shifters are a type of fae. Like they're fae. The only difference is that, like, according to this theory, they bred out the trait of pointed ears, so that after a few generations, like, the shifters no longer had pointed ears, so there would be no indicator that they were fae, which is interesting and not really something I saw coming, but it's like, how? So after Bryce finds out this information, she kind of gets briefly reunited back with, like, Hunt and Rune, and they're kind of trapped because there's these people, you know, the Harpy that's like, you know, I've got you where I want you. But then the Hen comes out and fights the Harpy, which, you know, reveals that she was Agent Daybright all along. And it's funny because Lydia, aka the Hen, she speaks with a lower voice when she's the Hen and a higher voice when she's herself. It's kind of funny, like, her voice gets, like, briefly higher when she's like Knight to Rune, but then her voice gets lower again when she's... It's kind of funny how that works out. It's like, I don't know why I thought of, like, Elizabeth Holmes. Like, I was like, you're just making your voice deeper your whole entire life. Like, what do you gain from this besides, like, no one recognizing, you know, your voice when you're, like, in spy mode, but still. So at this point, they are kind of being brought to Regalis at the throne room, or whatever you call it, and they're trapped. They get, like, shackled in these Gorzian stones, which kind of prevent you from using magic. So it's, you know, a struggle, but Bryce has the key that the Hen kind of slips her while they were, like, fake fighting, and she's able to get herself out, and the Rune speaks to remind Mind, like, hey, you have to go and get Hell's armies to, like, help us fight the Asteri. Can you please do that? Just leave me and Hunt here, we'll be fine. That's not exactly what he said, but that's pretty much what he said. As Bryce is able to get out of the shackles, she kind of unshackles Rune as they're, like, hugging, and then she uses her light power to, like, briefly blind everyone in the throne room, runs away / teleports away, and Regalia's just, like, hot on her ass. So she's, like, trying to hurry up, and she tries to do, like, a switcheroo where she goes behind him instead of in front of him, and she manages to get through the portal / gate to get through Hell. And this is the part where I got a little mad. This is where I was like, you know, at this point I kind of figured they were tied to Akatar because, you know, the description of the Avalon Fae, which is where Rune's mother hails from, that's how he has, like, that mind-speaking gift. I was like, huh, that sounds a lot like Prithian. Yeah, so it's connected because in the very last chapter, Bryce thinks she's in Hell, but she ends up meeting this Fae, and I will read what he looks like. Wings, great black wings, a demon's wings, but the male face that stared through the mist, grave and lethal. It was beautiful, despite the fact that his hazel eyes held no mercy. He spoke again, in a soft voice that promised pain. And when I first read that, I was like, well, who else could that be? And then they say something about scarred hands, and I was like, okay, I rolled my eyes so hard because I already knew where this was going. And then Bryce, he takes them to, I'm assuming, the House of Wind. And yeah, like, Amren's there, Reese is there, Cassian's there, everyone's there. Amren's the only one that can understand her because she's the only one that speaks this, like, old tongue. And I guess that's what Bryce is speaking, if I'm not mistaken. She's speaking some kind of language that, like, Amren remembers from her old world. And Reese is also able to understand Bryce, but yeah, no one else understands what Bryce is saying. Even when she's saying Hell, they're like, what? Funny, because when she first sees Reese, I guess he looks like Rune to the point where she first sees him and just, like, is Rune? And I never thought of them as looking that much alike. Obviously, like, the eye color and the hair color would be similar, I would assume. But I didn't think they would look that much alike. So in my head, I wasn't really picturing Rune as looking exactly like Reese. But if for Bryce to instinctively say Rune when she sees Reese, that would imply that they look a lot alike. And I'm like, Interesting. Ancestors, I think. So yeah, that chapter sort of ends with Reese being like, "Hello, Bryce Quinlan. My name is Reese," and it's like, so I'm assuming that. Okay, so I would imagine that Crescent City 3, they can't be in Prithian the whole entire time, but I'm assuming at least like the first, like, similar to how A Court of Wings and Ruin was, where like Feyre was in the Spring Court like the first 150 pages and then left. Like, I'm thinking maybe it'll be like that, where it's like A Court of Wings and Ruin. And then I realized the ending of this book was very similar to A Court of Mist and Fury, and that they go and try to infiltrate this place to get more information, and then end up getting caught, and then someone ends up getting taken away from everyone else. Yeah, this is very strong Court of Mist and Fury vibes. At least the very end was. So yeah, that chapter sort of ends with Reese being like, "Hello, Bryce Quinlan. My name is Reese," and it's like, so I'm assuming that. Okay, so I would imagine that Crescent City 3, they can't be in Prithian the whole entire time, but I'm assuming at least like the first, like, similar to how A Court of Wings and Ruin was, where like Feyre was in the Spring Court like the first 150 pages and then left. Like, I'm thinking maybe it'll be like that, where it's like A Court of Wings and Ruin. And then I realized the ending of this book was very similar to A Court of Mist and Fury, and that they go and try to infiltrate this place to get more information, and then end up getting caught, and then someone ends up getting taken away from everyone else. Yeah, this is very strong Court of Mist and Fury vibes. At least the very end was. And then at the epilogue, it's Ithan, and Ithan realizes that the alpha that he saw with the astronomer, the mystic, she apparently is the true heir to the Fendir line. Like, she's somehow related to the Fendirs. So yeah, that's how that's connected. And I was like confused as I was reading like Ithan's whole story arc, because I'm just like, how is this connected? Apparently it is connected, and I'm like, oh, okay, good, because I was like wondering where this was going. And luckily it went somewhere, and hopefully in the next book we'll see where that whole, her actually being the true alpha heir, where that goes. But yeah, I did enjoy this. I did. It took me a while to read it because I just kept getting distracted. But do I love it on the same level as Crescent City, well, House of Earth and Blood, the first novel? I don't know. I feel like there's not this instinctive, like, the first book I had just a instinct to just read it over and over again, where this one I was just like, ah, yeah. Like, I want to talk about it, but it's like, do I need to read it again? Not really. Maybe that'll change. Like, maybe I'll, reread House of Earth and Blood as well as this in the near future, especially like when the next book comes out. I'll definitely reread it by then. I think that was my mistake with this, was not rereading House of Earth and Blood right before I read this, because I was going based off of like remembering things correctly. But yeah, a lot of the things that came back in this book were big enough details that I would remember, I want to talk about something that I'm really glad that happened in this novel. Is I'm glad that, like, obviously, like, I feel like even in the first book they set it up for Bryce and Hunt to be endgame, but I know on the internet there were a lot of people saying that they wanted maybe Bryce to be with Adis, and I'm like, no, it doesn't feel right, because in my heart it didn't feel right, because it's like, why would Sarah put her with Ajibin? And also Adis, I guess you can argue that, like, in A Court of Thorns and Roses, like, okay, Reese wasn't really involved until like towards like the last half of the novel, but he was thoroughly involved, whereas Adis sort of just like pops up now and then. Like, he's not involved enough for him to be a love interest personally. So I'm glad that, like, yeah, Bryce and Hunt were just in game. It was just like straight through. Plus I think it works better because I feel like with Sarah J Maas we sort of expect the first love interest not to be the main love interest in the end, but I think Sarah was smart to make the first one the main one, because it throws people off, so then people think she's gonna end up with everyone but Hunt, but then she ends up with Hunt. But also, I just like Bryce and Hunt together. I just want them to be happy. Why do we have to try to... No. At least with Tamlin, it was like, the red flags were there. And with Chaol, I feel like him and Selena didn't really have the best chemistry, personally. But with Bryce and Hunt, it was just perfect. And I'm just like, please don't mess this up. So I'm glad they did not mess this up. A thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but I noticed in this novel as well as in House of Earth and Blood, it's this weird thing where like the book is sort of slow, like the first 300 to 400 pages, and then the last half is like all these things happening at once, particularly like the last 200 pages. There's like all this information. Everything's going so fast. You're like, well, Jesus, let me catch up. It's like all the big reveals were happening at the very end, which is like, I guess, how it should be. But it was also like, there was so much information that like, I was just like, wait, this, oh. Yeah, it was a lot happening. And it's like, it did keep me very engaged, which, you know, is a great thing. But it's also like, there's so much information in these books that like, I feel like you have to take your time, but also like, towards the end, you want to read it as quickly as possible to get to the end to figure out what's actually happening, and it's like this whole thing. And yeah, I feel like the first half of the book was mostly like talking about the rebel stuff, as well as like them doing it sort of, but like all the big main truths were revealed towards the end. So I always feel as though from this point onward, these books are going to be the kind of books where it's like it starts off slow, and then like the last like 300 pages is going to be like all this information, all these things, action happening at once. And yeah, I feel like that's going to be like sort of the blueprint for future Crescent City books. I assume it's either a trilogy or there are 4 books in the series, based on how it's going now. So we'll see. But I feel like I may be right about this sort of like blueprint for these books, of it being like a lot happening at the very end, a lot of reveals at the end. Although I feel like this novel had like a lot of things being revealed. I can't imagine like what else could we possibly learn at this point, because the Asteri being soul-sucking aliens, like so much like that movie Eternals. It's like how do we like where do you go from here, you know? It's like, Sarah, where do we go from here? Like, what do we do now? I don't know. But those are all of my thoughts on House of Sky and Breath. I really enjoyed this novel. There was a lot going on, not in a bad way necessarily, but in a way that I was just like, oh my god, slow down, what's happening? But yes, I'm really looking forward to the next book in the series. These are my thoughts for now, but who knows? I may like read this again and have like completely different thoughts in the future. Who knows? And I think that's like the nature of like reading a book once and not rereading it, because I'm just like, I have these thoughts now, but I might change my mind. Who knows? But as of right now, I enjoyed House of Sky and Breath. Maybe not as much as House of Earth and Blood, but I think I'm just like, I don't know. It set such a good impression, and it was such a good start to the series. And as well as all these things being revealed in this book, I don't know what else could possibly be revealed in upcoming novels. Maybe there's like a lot more to the story that I still don't know, that still hasn't been talked about in the novel yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. But if you enjoyed this review / discussion on House of Sky and Breath, please like and subscribe for more book-related content.